G'day and welcome to another lesson from 2020. We compare too much. Comparing is a fairly easy way to measure things. Like, you know you're tall or you're short because you compare yourself to others. Um, but it's not always accurate. My mother-in-law used to introduce one of her sons, one of my brothers-in-law, as her short, fat son because he was only 6'3" or something and he had some meat on his bones. He was short and fat compared to the other boys. But compared to an average human being, he was still skinny and tall, athletic, you know. So comparing, if you compare yourself to the wrong things, is not helpful. But we compare a lot. And it's almost built into a lot of what our society does, and it's really unhelpful. Let me give you an example. If you were to ask yourself, am I happy? Isn't comparing to others the wrong way, a dumb way to answer that question? Like, am I as happy as him? Am I as happy as her? That's a dumb way to answer that question, but that's almost what we do. Because one of the things we do is to work out whether we have enough, to work out whether our lives are going okay, we compare it to others. We look at others, and sometimes we look at the image they project, or we make up a kind of an ideal of what their life's like. We've got no idea the unhappiness they have, the struggles they have in their life, but we look at them and think, my life's not going as well as theirs. And it's just not a helpful way to compare. We compare financially, we compare materially, we compare in so many ways, and it opens us up to envy, which I think I might talk about next week, about how destructive envy is. But it just doesn't help us with our comparisons because it makes us feel worse about our situation when actually our situation's not bad. People living in Australia now, I know there's still people who have difficulties in their lives, and I'm not pretending that doesn't happen, that there's people who grew up with terrible circumstances. But most Australians, compare that to 500 years ago, like what it was like to be a serf in Europe or whatever, the medical care, the foods we have, the opportunity, life is so good. But we compare to others and make ourselves miserable. I'll give you an excellent example of this. I was reading something today that 1/8 of Australians are below the poverty line, and it's a really dumb way to measure it because what they do is they take the middle income, chop it in half, and call that the poverty line. It's got nothing to do with what people need to live on. It's got nothing to do with some definition of what poor is, but it's half of the middle income. Well, it's actually reasonable to expect like 1/8 of, it's maybe a quarter of half the income, middle income, would be below that level because, you're making it relative, so it's going to be relative. So another example from this year is it's incredible how this year we've seen around the world all sorts of government lockdowns that have drastically impacted human rights at a fundamental level with almost no protest whatsoever until recent times in the second and third wave kind of thing. But governments locked people in their houses. Governments closed down businesses effectively without a murmur of dissent. But yet there's been unrest that started in America, and we've seen it almost shipped around to other parts of the world when people compare black people and white people. And unfortunately, some of those comparisons are false comparisons because there's as many white people being killed, being arrested and in custody as there are black people in America. But we make this comparison that makes us feel worse. Comparing isn't always the best way. We've got to be careful of comparisons. We've got to stop comparing ourselves to others and just learn to ask, do I have enough? Am I okay? The other way that comparing is not good is that sometimes, a lot of the time, we compare to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. Let me give you an example. When I was in year 10, one of my friends was not good at maths. And the thing used to happen at the end of the year in exam time, it was I don't know why it was, but it was usually girls in the middle who got maybe 40% or 37%, and they felt bad and like, oh, I've failed. Then they'd find my friend and ask him, what'd you get for your exam? And he'd say, oh, 3%, 7%, whatever he got. And you'd see them brighten up. They felt better about themselves because they found someone they thought was dumber than them. That's basically what it was. Oh, at least I'm not as dumb as him. They never went and found the guy who kind of came first. because that would, that's not what they wanted to do. And I think we do that morally as well. Human beings look at others, find people who they think of as not as good as them, not as virtuous. And there's a lot of virtue signaling in our culture right at the moment, and it's so unhealthy. I'm a better person than them. I'm a better person than that. Well, actually, that doesn't help you to address your real problems and who you are, and to become a better person. The only way to become a better person is take a good hard look at yourself and not to be looking at others. The Bible talks about that a lot. Look in the mirror of the Word and see what you're like, and remember that, and make change by God's grace, of course. So I think we've got to stop comparing, and we've got to start learning to face ourselves in an objective sense, and also learn to be thankful and content with who we are and where we are and the many blessings we do have. Anyway, we compare too much. Let's stop comparing ourselves to others and just accept who we are and move on from there. God bless you. Have a good week.